Hello, my name is Gabriel Meissner, and you're watching rptv News. In this video, you'll be watching a meeting conducted by the Planning Committee for the SDP Stakeholders. The purpose of this meeting is to make recommendations on strategic direction and action priorities, inter-committee alignment, coordination, and stakeholder and resident engagement. More specifically, the Planning Committee assisted in supporting processes such as the SDP Stakeholder table meetings to ensure they are effective, the 4 work groups to be prepared to report at the SDP Stakeholder table meetings, and more. Let's continue to the meeting to see what they have to discuss.
So for today's agenda, purpose of Planning Committee, the committee makes recommendation to the SDP Stakeholder table on strategic direction and action priorities, inter-committee alignment, coordination, stakeholder and resident engagement by supporting the SDP Stakeholder table to ensure that the meetings are effective, supporting the 4 work groups to be prepared to report at the SDP Stakeholder table meeting, address requirements and/or requests that needs a quick response, identifying information and/or expertise that stakeholders require in order to make sound and informed decisions, developing facilitation approaches that increases the capacity of all stakeholders to engage in discussion and decision making.
Thank you. And so I'll quickly go over the agenda. So today's agenda, as we discussed, I believe it was 2 planning meetings ago, we decided on focusing on just 2 items until the stakeholders table meeting. So we have the April 25th stakeholders table meeting, and we had the strategic planning task force as the 2 main agenda items, as well as some updates from the city, in particular the reference group, that I'd like to share. Is there anything that members think that I missed that I should probably add to the the parking lot for a future meeting? I see no hands. I see nothing in the chat. Great. Next, facilitators. So I've sent out an email to request for facilitators for 2024. We were still using the 2023 list. And some of the members have changed positions. Some of the members are not able to attend these meetings anymore due to timing and other commitments. So I've sent it out to create a new list. I'm still awaiting responses. So if you've gotten that email, if you could please respond to me. And upcoming SDP events and meetings. What do we have? So next week, Tuesday, April 16th, we have agenda planning at 3:30 as usual. And we have an EED meeting scheduled on the 16th. I believe this meeting will be in person. This is they are doing elections this meeting for new co-chairs. And I believe that's going to be held at Daniel's Spectrum. This is an evening meeting. It says it starts here at 5 p.m. And I believe it'll be a 5 to 7 meeting or 5 to 8. I'm not sure when it ends. And then we have on Thursday, April 25th. Oh, sorry, April 18th. We have a planning committee at 1 o'clock. So next week's planning committee meeting will be at 1 p.m. Welcome, Adonis. Welcome, Joel. And then updates from the city staff. I've sent out an email communication to co-chairs. So Richard has contacted me again to remind that there's a request for members of the SDP to join the reference group. And the request is 2 members per working group. And he has left it up to, so April 17th is a meeting. However, Richard has said to confirm those people that will be attending tomorrow. So by April 12th, he's looking for confirmation as to who it is that will be attending from each working group. And I did send an email at the beginning of this week, another email last week to members of the SDP. Particularly was the co-chairs that I sent the email to, and still waiting a response. So that's the update that I have from the city staff. Yes, Michael.
So can I get some further clarification on what we know from Richard?
Sure.
As far as I heard, he's sent out at least 2 other meetings. He said there would be another meeting for organization, but at this point, if he can't confirm that there is a meeting for organizations, then I would just like to go to the working group meeting.
So in terms of updates that I have for you or that SDP is aware of, he's only contacted the SDP for or invited through the working group. So this is the only request that he sent out for SDP participation to the SDP email. So that's the only one that I'm aware of. I'm not sure if I know other members of the SDP were asked to do one-on-one. I think Waleed said that he met with the consultants as well. I'm not sure, I forget who else it was. But I don't have any information to
All right.
provide for that.
So then, because we did hear other information than that, so if nobody else is able to answer the question, because I wasn't asking to any specific person,
Correct.
but if there is nobody else who knows about what went out in the last day or so, then that's fine. I won't ask it here. I'll have to ask somewhere else. But it's unfortunate that there's a deadline of tomorrow, because now I don't know which meeting I'm supposed to go to, and nobody is going to be able to likely clarify that for me by tomorrow. So this is a very unfortunate situation. I may just have to request to go to the working group meeting because I haven't got any other confirmation on what's going on. So I don't know how full you are with people from the working group meetings, but at this point I have very little other choice but to say that I would like to be there for the community building working group, and I don't know really. I mean, as I said, I was expecting to have a list of possible meetings by now to know which meeting to register for, but since that hasn't been provided, I really would like to just register for the working group, and because there doesn't seem to be any other alternative at this point.
Marlene, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Why don't you just call Richard and ask him?
I will try that, but the deadline is pretty tight, and I have my own group meeting tomorrow that has to
Call him today. Call him today and ask him.
It's pretty late to do that. I'll try, but I don't
Oh,
know how
it's
far
after
that's
5
going to get.
o'clock. Yeah, or call him first thing in the morning.
Yeah, I'll try, but I mean, I have very few chances to even try tomorrow, so I'll see what happens. But it's looking a little confusing right now.
Yeah, well,
So
he's the
Michael,
one with the answer.
so I was just going to say, so Michael, just for note taking, I was just going to write it down for my personal notes. You're saying that you wanted to join on behalf of community building?
Yes.
Okay, so I will send that over to the community building. It is, I think they've already started the process of selecting. I saw their email, but I didn't read it yet. They may have already selected it as well, their representatives. But I've noted that down over here and I'll communicate that with them. But again, as Marlene was hinting at, this is not in my control. This is not in anyone's control from the SDP. I'm simply just a messenger. I was just passing along the message that Richard had sent to the SDP email address. And with any questions regarding the reference group, any meetings and things like that, they would have to be directed towards him or to him directly. So first, oh, Adonis, did you want to speak on that before I move on?
Yeah, I just want you to tell us how many reps have confirmed from each of the working groups at this point in time.
I don't think anyone has confirmed yet.
What's
I
not?
saw your email, like communications sent out an email to see if there was consensus about who would represent, but I'm not sure if that landed on anything. But
Yeah,
none of the other groups have.
Yeah, we did land. Sorry, I thought you got that email.
No, I haven't gotten that yet, but none of the other groups have communicated with me. Actually, one question I want to ask the group, but before I move on, Adonis, does that answer your question? I haven't gotten anything.
Okay, so all right.
For EED, so he wants to hear a response from the SDP tomorrow. EED's election is on April 16th. Who do we connect with? Who do we contact, or who's going to be representing EED at the SDP consultation? Do we have any input with regards to that? See no hands. I'm kind of stuck over here because again, I've been sending emails to the EED group. I'm not sure who's managing that, but I'm not really expecting a response from them because there is no resident co-chairs. And the EED meetings are basically leadership meetings, and these meetings are more about the initiatives EED is taking rather than residents interactions. It's more planning for events and things like that. So I'm not sure how we move forward with EED's involvement at this reference group.
Do you think Gail might, knowing the group, she might have some suggestions, or maybe even Ismail Afra? I don't know if you'd want to engage with that question or not.
Okay, so I will call them both tomorrow. If both of them are not responsive, so this is worst case scenario. They're either not responsive the entire day, or let's say they're not interested. They both said that they're not interested. Who would be the next in line to call, Joel? Would it be, should I start calling like Fatima Saya, Haysam, like agency members then?
I think you could try that. My sense is that this seems to be more aiming to have a consultation with residents, if I understand their communications, but they could have that perspective too. I think maybe Marlene, you were going to say something too, or?
Yeah, Fatima had sent out, had called a number of us to say, do you know people? Do you want to do, any of you want to do it? Whatever. She was looking for residents to take on this position. And we talked about it, but really didn't know at that point if there was anyone who wanted to take this on.
Is this the co-chairs or just attending the consultation?
Just being co-chairs, yeah.
No, this is about attending. I think this is about attending the consultation, isn't it?
Correct.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, so I'm asking about, so that's going on as well, Marlene, but I'm asking about
Okay.
the consultation.
Okay, no, I don't know about that one then. This was them looking for, people to join.
Sure, go ahead.
Sorry, is the consultation open to like anyone to attend in our community? Just wanted to ask that.
So the consultation is invite only.
Invite
there's-
only?
Yeah, so there's currently a sign-up sheet where people can register, and then the consultants are pulling from those that have registered.
Okay.
I think they have their own selection criteria for that. If you want, I could probably just send you, because the deadline is, I don't know when the deadline is, but I could just share that email with you.
Okay, because I'm getting confused with that, and I know previous meeting we talked about how we needed students or even community members to be involved in a specific discussion, but I'm not sure if I'm mixing these two up.
No. So we've talked about, I think we mentioned that we identified a few of the groups that were going to be
Okay.
represented at Refresh. And I think Gail was sharing that youth was going to be one. Another group was going to be, people with special abilities. We were going to have groups of TCH residents, market residents, and things like that. And
Okay.
that has since, to my understanding, expanded to even service providers, like Michael was
Okay.
mentioning, like organizations in the community.
Do you want us, like from Dixon Hall, to send out e-blast? I can ask permission from my manager, but I just wanted to open that invitation up that you guys can do that as well.
I appreciate that, but I think we can hold off on that because that's not so much of an SDP priority. That's more of the city's priority. But I'll remember that. Next time there's something that we need to share, I'll send that over to either you or someone else at Dixon Hall. Okay, so that's the reference group. That is the refresh. I will contact Gail. Gail said that she's already part of one of the consultants groups, so she won't be able to participate on behalf of EED. But I'll see if Ismail Afra is interested and see if they know anyone else who can represent EED. Marlene, go ahead.
No, sorry. I thought I had lowered it.
Next item. So the next item we have is the April 25th Stakeholders Table meeting. And I wanted to go over the ongoing tasks and if there's anything that we haven't started yet. I'll also go over the draft agenda that I've prepared and the reminder for the report for information. So the task list. So this is the chart that we went over last week, but up here I basically have highlighted or just written out things that are still ongoing or we haven't landed on yet. So the report for information and the information package. So numerous emails have been sent out to working group co-chairs to share the list of milestones and to fill that into the report outline that I had sent. It's the same outline that we use for all the stakeholders table meetings where there's a summary, there's implications, comments, and any optional attachments that people would like. I've seen that communications have started to kind of put that together, but I think the outlines that I had sent out are still blank. I'm hoping to finalize that by Monday, and this is just an announcement. I wanted working groups to send that to me by Monday so I can put it together in one document. And as soon as I do that, I will send that out to residents. Our practice here with the stakeholders table meeting is to send out this report for information, the slide deck, and the agenda a week prior to the meeting so that people can prepare for the meeting and they can come to the meeting informed on the items that are going to be presented. So I want to share that. With regards to the slide deck, same thing. I've emailed to working group co-chairs about preparing the slides for their working group. So in the slide deck, fortunately, I don't have it linked here, but if anyone here wants to see it, I could just go over the blank slide deck that I have. So I created a draft and I have outlined different sections for each of the working groups as well as evaluations. And I believe there's a final section for the strategic planning section. And that section will be outlining what the activity is. So basically what strategic planning is and what the engagement activity is going to be. So that people know what it is that we're going to be doing with that. Catering. So with regards to catering, I wanted to ask if there was any update on that because we will have to place the orders soon. And I'm just asking if we have any update. Does anyone here have any updates with regards to that?
I do.
Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
So I believe I was tasked with this last week. And so, yeah, I reached out and confirmed that we have an offering, a couple offerings at this point in time. So, yeah, we're taking care of it. Nothing's been put in stone yet, but certainly it's well under the budget so far.
Thank you.
But I guess I just need to know what numbers of people we're planning for.
So in terms of registered names, Adonis, I have the sign-up sheet open here. Not too many people have registered this time around. We have just 7 responses.
So we're looking at 50. Is that a good number?
Yeah, 50 is a good number.
Okay.
Because that's how many people we had registered at the November 27th meeting.
Yeah.
So
So
50 is a good number.
So I'm on track for 50. So that's fine.
I think more people actually showed up though, did they not?
So where we missed out, Marlene, is our registration table was on the Dundas side of the street or Dundas side of the door.
Right.
And if anyone had entered through the other entrance, we would have missed them. So if anyone entered from there, then we missed them. But with regards to the catering itself, I think what we didn't account for was the childminding. And that's where we would kind of have to guess. So Adonis, in the main living room, it would be about 50 people, plus anything for the children. So right now for children, I think we had about 10 children last time. We had 3 childminders and it's 3 children per, so about 9 kids.
I think it would be safer if you looked at about 65.
Okay, thanks.
It's really awful running out of food. It really is.
When we think of kids, just like probably 2 kids is good for one person, one adult.
Yeah. But it's pretty unpleasant sort of scraping the bottom of the barrel when people wander in. And people come in who don't register.
Okay, noted. We can move on.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I just want to confirm, so we said we would have Catch the Flavor printed if we were able to get the items to you in time, Adonis. And you said we landed on, I think it was 1 week lead time, or was it 2 weeks that you wanted? 1 week for printing, so you would need 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, it's pretty much too late.
Figured.
Yeah, but it doesn't look like we're gonna get this information. You haven't got it from anybody but communications, right? So. Yeah, so it's too late for any printed material.
Hello?
Yes, Michael, go ahead.
If I'm able to contact my printing source, which is often difficult and may not happen in that time frame, then I may be able to get some copies of reports printed.
Of the actual, so you're talking about the report for information? The information package, Michael, or are you talking about?
Well, this is all up in the air at this point. So it could have been the evaluation report. It could be some copies of the report, the reports from the working groups. If nothing else comes through in the last minute, I may be able to show up with something, but at this point, I wouldn't even count on that.
Okay, Michael, so I would ask you, would this printing be in kind or would
Yeah.
the cost? Okay, thank you. Make sure that that gets noted. And so with regards to the printouts of the agenda, the report for information miscellaneous, I will contact, I believe it was Isha that we emailed last time to get the printouts based on Inez's instructions for the November 27th meeting. And we had the printouts of the agenda. We had printouts of the report for information for anyone that needed it, needed a physical copy rather than digital. So we'll be doing that again. But again, this will all have to be done once it's finalized. So we'll revisit this next week. Once we finalize the agenda, once we finalize the report for information, and I'll reach out to Isha. Setup and takedown crew. So I believe, but I think we have confirmation that we'll have 3 animators on the day of, and the 3 animators will help with the setup and takedown. I'm just trying to look for the email. So, yep, perfect. So they have confirmed that we will get 3 animators to support with the pickup and takedown. I guess somewhere in conversation we lost the support for door drops. So I need to reach out and make sure we have confirmation for the door drops as well. I'll write that down.
Ann Kirkland didn't help you?
Sorry, Jane?
Ann Kirkland didn't help you?
No, I'm sorry. I haven't been able to contact her. I'm gonna reach out to her.
Hey, I'll try and find out.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that with me though, Sarah Jane. Food service is another thing. So Adonis, I guess once we figure out who will be catering, we can talk about food service at that point. So we can revisit this next week. So that's for the task list. Oh, what's missing from the task list is the registration. Question, do we have any volunteers to set up the registration table at the April 25th meeting? So I will need people from anyone from the SDP to step forward and set up the registration table. At the November 27th registration table, we had Ilona and Marlene. Marlene, maybe I can ask you to share how your experience at the registration table was to provide some insights to people who are thinking about it.
Well, that was fine. The registration was fine. I mean, people came in, they, filled out the stuff. It was very straightforward. It was a simple task.
I can help.
Thank you, Sarah Jane.
Really simple task.
Simple yet crucial, I will say.
Very crucial. Yeah, very crucial. It's an easy task.
We had 10 new residents sign up for the SDP that day, thanks to your registration, Marlene.
Wow, did not realize that.
So Sarah Jane, I'll put you down as one of the volunteers there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But I can help. I don't have to do the whole thing, but I can help.
Thank you. So Sarah Jane, you and whoever else wishes to participate, you will get pens, you will get the sign-up sheets given to you. So as people walk in, they can sign up from there. We will try to get maybe an animator for support with that, or a volunteer. I'm not sure how much we can rely on the animators. I'm not sure what the fine print is for that. But maybe we can ask one of the volunteers to help out as well, because we'll have two forms of sign up. One will be a check mark. People will come give their name if they've registered online. We just kind of sign off that, okay, yeah, this person showed up. And the next one will be anyone who hasn't registered, they would just write down their name.
Are we gonna do both doors then?
Just the one door. Just the one door.
Dundas door? Or
Yes,
the,
the
okay.
Dundas.
So you should keep the other one locked, maybe.
That is, it's not our building, so it's not up to us, right?
Can't, yeah.
If it was my house, I would have done that, Sarah Jane.
Mine too. We could ask for Reed.
You can't, they don't lock it, yeah.
Because we still have other spaces in the building that are being used by other people, right? So we
Right.
can't limit their access, and also for safety,
Yeah,
we can lock doors.
That's true.
But thank you for the suggestion. Okay, draft agenda. So we have here the draft agenda. I referred to the notes that we took at previous meetings in March regarding the April 25th meeting, as well as the progress report that happened in I have 2023 here, but I believe it was, yes, spring of 2023, just before I started. So I used this to determine what this draft agenda would look like. I included time for food, introductions, working group information, evaluation, and the strategic plan. Again, this is just very high level, very rough. I will go into detail and break it down like this for the facilitators on the day of. But right now I have it simple so we can understand the high level points of this. So 5 o'clock on the poster, we have 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. And so at 5 to 5:15, it'll be socializing. People can come in, greet their neighbors, have small talk, and kind of get situated. So that's when we'll be doing the sign in. And I wanted to bring back the idea that was presented at the November 27th meeting, was either having the STP videos that we have on the website and videos that we created a few years ago, talking about what it is that the 4 working groups are, the 4 pillars of the SDP. We can have those videos in a loop. Or Gail was saying that we have a revitalization video somewhere, and perhaps we can play that one. That one kind of highlighted the revitalization that happened. I think it was the 60s that it happened in. And just sharing the insights and things like that from that videos. We could just have it playing in the background as people are walking in. At 5:15 to 5:45, we will have dinner being served just before the meeting starts. Sarah Jane?
I have to be upstairs for child modding at some point, but I don't have to be the main greeter. I can go up as soon as the registration is finished. Does that work?
So with registration, we had people kind of trailing into like mid-meeting. So I don't think you'll be able to do both.
Well, I'd rather do the child minding.
No, I bet. That's more fun. We're gonna need, yeah, folks, I'm gonna have to lean on everyone here to see who can support with the registration. I will be note-taking that day in, so I won't be able to. Adonis, did you have any ideas?
Yeah, why don't the animators who are there, the 3 animators?
So when I sent out the request for the animators, Adonis, I sent it out for specifically the setup and takedown. I'm not sure, so I need to talk to Peter to see how that works out, like if he's gonna have 2 separate shifts of animators helping for an hour each, or if they're gonna be there the entire time. If they'll be there the entire time, then it makes sense to just have animators do that. You're right.
Ismail, I'd be willing to do the registration. Just not quite sure if I have any other responsibilities. I don't think I would, as long as I got the I think I should be able to do the organizing for the child minding before that.
Okay, that's good.
Joel, I want.
No, you think I should have I'll have other stuff to do, or?
I think so, because last time the child minding, we had an issue about either one of the child minders didn't show up, or we had more children than that had registered. And I think you spent a good 30 minutes of the beginning of the meeting to organize for a last minute child minder.
No, you got a better memory than me then.
And then you were also presenting on behalf of the community building. So you were running around quite a bit.
Yeah.
it's nice to know that, you and Sarah Jane are willing to support when you can. But I like Adonis's idea of using the animators. And Joel, I said I would last week, but I didn't get a chance to connect with you. I need to connect with you regarding the volunteers that you said you might have. And we can see maybe if the volunteers can support with that as well.
Sure, okay.
I'll write that down. Okay, so that is dinner. So dinner will be served. We'll leave 30 minutes rather for people to grab their meals and get situated again. And then at 5:45, we will start the actual meeting. 5:45 to 6 will be the welcome. We do the land acknowledgements. We'll do introductions. So quick introductions of the stakeholders table co-chairs. We'll do an introduction to the SDP. So what it is the SDP is, the 4 pillars of SDP, and what the purpose of the meeting is. Then from 6 o'clock to 6:40, the bulk of the meeting will be working groups presentations.
Sorry.
We had 10 minutes each for the working groups. Yes, go ahead, Adonis.
I feel we keep going over this. That we're not, I thought we landed a decision last week that we're not doing working group presentations.
That's what we did.
So you did present the idea, you're right. I don't think we landed on anything.
Okay.
So
Well,
we
I
kind of
didn't
went back
plan
to
on
the
doing.
defaults.
I'm proposing that we skip the working group presentations, that we leave room for everything else that we're doing, the evaluations and the strategic planning.
Hello?
Michael, go ahead. I'm just gonna write
Yeah,
this.
so we're not working off a previous agenda.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we were going to include all of the working group related material in the 5-year updates that go into the main presentation. So the reports you're getting back now, if you do get them, otherwise we'll have to come up with some other way of getting them. But that material, that goes into the first part of the presentation, and it's certainly not going to be 10 minutes per working group. The whole thing is probably going to be about 10 minutes for all the working groups.
So the working groups will only be introducing themselves and maybe what their purpose is. That's it. Not even that. So 10
Well,
minutes per working group. What are we
I would
proposing
still
then?
say it's a good idea. Organize the slides with all of the 5-year accomplishments. I would still say a person from each working group can read off their own slide or their slide for their working group, but it's still just one slide basically per working group. It's not a multi-minute presentation.
I agree with Donna. If it means anything.
I mean, how did other people think that the 5-year review was going to be accomplished in this meeting? I thought that was essentially replacing the working group reports, because the 5-year review is mostly the working groups. We also have one for evaluation, but basically that is the working group report.
So I will say that, Adonis, I see your hand up, and then we have Caitlin. What I have here is what I was proposing was working groups present the milestones of past things they're working on currently and things that they have planned for 2024, the remainder of 2024. And so I was allocating 10 minutes per working group to kind of share that, because we had ideas about how we would introduce or reintroduce residents to the SDP. And with that, we would have to talk about the purpose of each of the working group. for the SDP. And with that, we would lead into clearing up misconceptions that were presented last week. But I'll stop there. Adonis, I see your hand, and then we'll go to Caitlin. Adonis?
Yeah, I think we're getting into the agenda of the actual meeting itself. So it's hard to say without the information that you are supposed to be collecting. But how I guess I see it is that after the intro to the SDP, made by the SDP co-chairs about the purpose of the meeting, they've already introduced the 4 pillars. And then we will get into the actual agenda of the meeting itself. Now, I don't know, I have no idea what evaluation is presenting. And so we need to figure that out. But the whole point that I'm trying to say is that we use, and again, I keep saying this, feel like a broken record sometimes, but we use the SDP rather than the model that we have done. Throw it out. Throw the old model out. We're not doing that anymore. The model that we're doing is an interactive way of getting people involved in giving us feedback about the SDP. So don't think of the old model of what we've done in the past. We need to think about what we want to accomplish out of this meeting in a classroom. So instead of saying a projection screen, instead of talking about a report that goes out for people to read beforehand, instead of papers that go out so people can look at the thing, we think of things like on 4 walls, there is a list of accomplishment of each of the working groups. And we ask people, go around to each of those groups with a marker, with paper, with whatever we're getting them, and put feedback on those charts. On each of those charts. We accomplish the same thing as putting it in a screen. Actually, it accomplishes better because people could actually go up, read, interact with those things, put on the stickies on those things. They could see what the working groups are. We've already explained what the working groups are. Now they see the list of accomplishments that presumably the working groups have sent over the past 5 years or 2 years or 3 years, whatever they have, right? Like, get rid of the old model. So that's what I'm proposing here. And again, I don't know what the evaluation is presenting, but and unfortunately, we don't have what the accomplishments of each of the working groups are because they haven't sent them yet. So we're behind the 8 ball here, but presumably that's what we want to do. So it doesn't take a lot of prep in terms of preparing materials, printing anything. No, what it takes is once we have those lists, then we have to get people who are going to write out those charts with those accomplishments on it in such a way that makes sense to participants who are there. Does that kind of make sense? But that does.
That goes into the next agenda item. So we'll revisit that. But before I go to Caitlin, Adonis, who do we leave it up to create the charts and the write-outs if we're talking about having accomplishments on each of the walls? So do we want to have it kind of blown up on like chart paper size? And then how do we do that?
That'd be great. So, but I guess, first of all, it's someone who, and I presume Michael and you are going to go through what, you're preparing the materials. You're going to go through the accomplishments and have that in terms of a print, like have whatever you draft of the materials you want to do. And then it's a question of, okay, let's take that, let's get it, big, printed on a big paper or something, right?
Yeah, Michael, so I have you after Caitlin. So essentially I will have to figure out how we do this. So you're proposing that we just have the milestones on the wall and then, okay, so I guess we submitted the business case for the printouts of Catch the Flavor, but since we're not doing that, maybe we can reallocate the funds from the printouts to print this out. I don't think it will cost as much, but that should be able to cover it. Yeah, we can do that. I'll just figure out where we can print out such big pieces because I imagine we need a commercial printer for that.
Yeah.
And then because we still don't even have the milestones for it, I don't know what type of lead time those printers would need. Or the people that print that out, I don't know what type of lead time they will need, so I'm not sure. Worst case scenario,
Hello?
I'll ask I will arrange for some sort of chart paper. I can check the YSM office, bring chart paper, I'll ask the co-chairs over there to just write out their milestones using a marker. But that's what we'll have to land on if I can't find a printer in
Yeah, I'm
in
sure
the-
we can
in the
find a
long run.
printer as long as we get it in, a few days before,
Yeah, I had Monday as a deadline, so I know we have
Hello?
some communications. And we'll see who else sends it to me.
Okay.
Caitlin, then Michael, and then Joel. Caitlin?
So I have an alternative suggestion and a question. My alternative suggestion, I like what Adonis was saying about having the milestones up on the wall, but my alternative suggestion is one of the things that evaluations has discussed presenting is the recommendations that was made to each of the working groups and committees based on their evaluations. So I'm wondering if it would be more interactive instead of talking about things that have already happened, like still talk about those, but put the recommendations up on the wall and people can either, write their name or put a sticker to say like, oh, I think this should be something that you do this year. So to give them a little bit more input into the future. And my question is, if this isn't the agenda that's going to be for the meeting, for like the 5 years in review, who were we thinking of having present that? Was it going to be the stakeholders table co-chairs? That's all.
That's a good question. I'm not sure if we landed on that yet. Does anyone have a response for Caitlin before we move to Michael's
Well, I
comment?
have a response to your previous points, so that if you're looking for responses, I'm way behind at this point. So the printing issue.
Yes, Michael, go ahead.
It's easy to format that so that it could be printed on 3 11 by 17 pages, which are just stuck one under the other. So I can format that so it can be easily printed within a day or two at any of our printers, because it does not require an external printer to make that happen.
So, yep.
So I can make sure that happens in terms of getting them printed onto what would essentially be like 17 by 33 inch sheets. That's very easy to do. That does not require lead time really at all. As for like how much we do and how we present it at the meeting, I think that depends on like the overall structure of the meeting. Like we're still being a little bit unclear about this. Do we put up these posters of past accomplishments? We said we wanted to have tables. What are the questions that we're asking at the tables? So one possibility is to have people go over the recommendations, but even that's kind of limiting, because those recommendations were mostly based on sort of the immediate work that was happening in 2023 and issues that were noticed, whereas we also want to know from people what they think of the work of the working groups and the topic areas and what should be sort of future ideas that may not come out of recommendations based on the past work. So that should also be taken into consideration, as how are we going to get that kind of comment from people. But yeah, as far as the printing is concerned, it's quite easy once we decide what we want to format it so it'd be quickly printed within a couple of hours.
Thank you, Michael. That's honestly a great suggestion. That is something that we can do if we don't find another solution in time. But going back to Caitlin's question about who will be presenting, hopefully we can land on something. I'm not sure, Adonis, if you had a response to Caitlin's question, or if I can just keep you in the queue with Joel before you.
Yeah, go to Joel.
Okay, Joel.
Yeah. So that was so far along now. So much ago now, I don't quite remember. Something about doing the interactive piece, I think. Yeah, or maybe somebody I think the idea was maybe somebody in this group here has a contact for a printer. If we do decide to use a printer, that they could just, so that you don't have to search for it, Ismail, that somebody could give you a contact. I might be able to find one through YSM too.
But I will like to ask, is anyone against the idea of printing out on the 11 by 17 sheets of paper? Is anyone against that? I feel like that we can do that without paying anyone, without
No,
No, it has to be large. Sorry, I'm interrupting.
No, it's 11 by 30. No, it's 17 by 33. It's large enough. I've done this before.
Yeah,
Nobody said it was too small.
sounds good.
So 17 by 33 essentially would be the 17 by 11 piece of paper formatted across 3 sheets of paper. So it gets printed out separately, but it's basically 17 by 33, the size of your average LCD TV screen. I see 2 messages. Caitlin, not sure if you're still here. Thank you for joining us. And Joel, I think you told me that you had to step away at 6 as well. So thank you, Joel. Joel, is there anything else you want to share before you leave?
No, I think that was it. Yeah, I'm good with the 17 by 33 size.
Perfect. So what I will propose is that's what we use. Just so we land on something for this matter. Adonis, take it away.
yeah, this is a little bit of the cart before the horse kind of thing, because we don't have the accomplishments with us. But in terms of what Caitlin just said, my thoughts, it's great that that's the recommendations that are coming from the evaluations. That's great. But I would say if that's the case, then the accomplishments should come first. People need to know what the accomplishments are of the working groups before the recommendations that are being made. In my opinion, again, I haven't seen the recommendations. I don't know about the recommendations, but it seems to me the order should be that you view the working groups' accomplishments. You get feedback about the accomplishments, and then you go to the evaluations recommendations, and then you get feedback from that as well, which leads to the future, I guess. But yeah, that's the order I would like to see. So I don't know what format those recommendations are taking, and what kind of process will be used to engage the audience in that recommendations. But again, I think the accomplishments go first and then the recommendations. As theory.
Right,
Again,
right.
I don't know. I haven't seen what's been presented as far as evaluation.
Michael, did you want to respond to that?
Okay, so I think what the evaluations will end up with is, well, we were originally thinking in terms of a presentation. Now we're really minimizing the role of presentations in this meeting, so it may not turn out this way. But what it was going to be was a few slides, like probably no more than 5, of some of the analysis of the attendance, some of the other analysis and findings, and then the recommendations. Now, I did give you a draft of the report, so if you want to look, you'll see in there recommendations, and that may not be exactly what comes out, but you'll have a pretty good idea what kinds of things we're talking about. So you do have that, and you'll have some idea what we had, which was basically a list of points, and that report was fairly early on. So some of the working groups have much more now than they did at the time that was written. But basically, it's between like 3 and 10 points for each of the 4 working groups and the 2 committees that we worked on. So that's what it is. It's a list of short recommendations. Each recommendation is only 1 or 2 sentences, and there's a few of them for each working group and committee. That should certainly be presented to people in some form, either on the presentations or perhaps another one of these charts could be made with the recommendations, but it certainly should be out there. And then the other thing I would leave space for is people's own ideas that, may not be a direct response to either the past or the evaluation recommendations. I would say with one set of these 33 by 17 for each working group for the past, and then another set for the recommendations, and a space for new ideas or what people believe the working group should be doing in the future, then that would be a space where people could put all of their ideas out. Now, I don't know whether this works better flat on a table or hanging against a window or what. The physical arrangement of this is going to have to be thought about. But in terms of content, if we imagine that there are approximately, depending on how much space it takes up, between 4 and 6 11 by 17 sheets per working group, and maybe we'll have to have one for the committees as well. We just have to find some way to spread that around the space to make sure we put both the past, the recommendations, and other ideas for the future somewhere on those sheets. I think this is very doable. The main thing I'm actually concerned about at this point is the physical arrangement of the space, which is not ideal for this. Did you find out whether we are allowed to use the other side of the L?
So I did reach out to Fareed after we had the discussion. Haven't received the response yet. Adonis, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. That's helpful to know. I'm not against using a slide presentation for the evaluations. I think if it's like to have the recommendations and a facilitator walk everybody through the recommendations or through what the evaluations report is about, I'm not against that. It might be because of the lack of space, right? I think we leave we do the slide presentation around the evaluations, and then we go to the interactive pieces of the accomplishments, and then feedback around the evaluations that were presented, the recommendations if possible. So again, I'm not opposed to having a presentation of the slide if it helps everybody understand the evaluations. I think it would be helpful for us, since the evaluation already has that information, if they could present it next week with the planning committee, and then we have a better understanding of what they're presenting. Is that possible? For the evaluations to present what they're going to the planning group, the content, their slideshow or whatever they're doing?
I like the idea of still having slides. I think we don't need slides for all the presenters, like you said, Adonis. The slide could even just serve the idea of having, being an agenda. So whatever activity it is that we're doing, for example, the interactive piece, on a screen, we would just have interactive piece, and this is what we're doing where we are. But with response to the evaluations, we have a meeting next week, so on Monday. So we would have to talk amongst the group to see if we can put that together. We can probably share a high level of what it is that we want to present. We did already discuss that, so I can probably share a little bit now and see what members think. So we have, in the evaluation notes, we have presenting recommendations and findings, but you're asking for the specifics, and I don't have the specifics yet, but it was going to be SDP as a whole, and this will be presenting on social cohesion and inclusion. But your question with regards to what exactly those stats are, I don't know yet. And also the working group. For working group, it was going to be the same recommendations we had in the individual working group presentation. So when I had joined working groups and shared recommendations, those we're going to be pulling from those. And we have attendance data as well that I was going to be sharing. So we can address the composition issue to let people know that we do have more TCH residents and to address that. We were also going to share a student analysis. So right now we still have 2 students at Evaluation Benchmarks Committee who are doing the analysis of the 2 rounds of surveys. So for those of us who remember the 2023 surveys, we did a version of it in spring and we did it again in fall. So what they're looking to see is how much changes happened between those 2 meetings. And we had even met with working groups to present interim meetings with working groups and with the champions of each of the working groups to provide recommendations. So they want to present on what the change between those 2 time periods was, if it was significant, if we moved towards our goal, or maybe even away, and possible reasons why. And we wanted to ultimately tie those findings to the long-term direction of the SDP. But specifics, Adonis, Michael, maybe you can help me out with this. Michael, do you think we can probably have specifics that we will be sharing on the 25th be presented to planning next week?
Specifics on?
So which specific stats we wanted to present? Do you think we can finalize that between the Evaluation Benchmarks Committee before next week's planning committee meeting?
I was hoping to sort of generate a shorter version of the report. It would be 3 or 4 slides plus the recommendations, and that could be something we could start with. And then, so yes, I think we could come up with a pretty good draft quite quickly.
Yeah, that would be great. I think that would be helpful so that people know what's the evaluation proposing, and then how, and by that time, hopefully we'll have what each of the working groups' accomplishments are as well. And we could just go through the content very quickly.
So Adonis, you were basically saying, like, to go back to your idea, based on what it is that evaluations is presenting, we can have a more informed decision as to whether evaluation goes first or if the working groups go first.
Yes.
Okay. So next week we will have to decide that, because after our meeting next week, I will be sharing the agenda with those that have registered. So yeah, as long as we can land on something, next week's meeting is at 1. So I could make quick changes to the agenda after the meeting and send that out. So next week I'll write that down here. Is there anyone opposed to the idea of waiting until next week before we land on the agenda? Order of the agenda?
No problem.
Perfect. I don't see any point in going over the rest of the agenda over here, but since it's not long, the rest of my draft agenda included 20 minutes for evaluations to share key findings and their plans for the 2024 evaluations. And then I had 10 minutes here for the strategic plan. This was going to be about the piece of introducing what, why, and when, and explain the engagement activities. And then I had allocated 35 minutes for the actual engagement activity. So if we can just talk about the engagement activity. So we have basically kind of built on the idea, or no, that goes into the next agenda item. So I will have to come back to this. Before I ask Adonis to explain, Adonis, can I ask you, do you think 35 minutes is not enough time? I feel like an hour, at least we would need at least an hour, right? Report for information, I guess, since we're modifying the actual presentation, since working groups won't be presenting at this, it doesn't make sense to ask working groups to prepare this report for information anymore. And so what I would like to propose is basically what Adonis has been saying for the last couple of weeks. And Adonis, I do pay attention to what you're saying. I'm not ignoring you. It's just until it's formally approved, I can't say that we landed on anything. So now, Adonis's idea, I'm going to put that in notes. Adonis's idea, Ismail Mohammed brings back. So for this stakeholders table meeting, I would like to propose that we don't have a traditional report for information. We do send out a report, but this will be just a high level of the milestones, something to share of what will be presented. So we can have a little bit about the evaluation, since there will be an evaluations piece, and another section about milestones. And maybe someone can amend it to say that we don't even include the milestones. We just kind of share what the agenda is, and we can talk about the evaluations. But yeah, I'm proposing that we modify the report for information to only include evaluations and talk a little bit about the agenda.
I think the more like sort of salient point to me is that what goes out a week in advance will not be necessarily include exactly the same material as we will have by the day of the meeting. So if you want to simplify it by sort of not including the milestones, see, I'm not as clear about whether the milestones will be ready by then, whereas the other material, I could say a version could go out by a week in advance, but I wouldn't want to be tied down to that is exactly what we will use on the day of, because I'm sure that some modifications will be made between the 18th and the 25th in sort of just even in just preparing the final printed version of it. So I'm not against putting out either the milestones or the evaluations next week. But again, I'm less clear about the milestones, whether they will be ready by then. But for the evaluations, I would say a final version would not be ready. So whatever is sent out would not be identical. It would be a draft so people would know the kind of material we're looking at. But I think we should assume that the exact questions, the exact format, how we lay this out on the larger sheets, maybe even some of the content could change. I'm not even clear exactly when we will get information from the students, if we're using that or how or when we're using it. So I wouldn't want to be tied down and say this must be finalized by the 18th.
Okay. Adonis, I see your hand up. I just want to respond to Michael quickly. Michael, so this report for information, it's just going to be high level of what is being included or talked about at this meeting, not so much the details. So the details, so the actual presentation and the evaluations report will be sent after the meeting once it's prepared. But this is just to, like we discussed at eval, it'll include a summary of what evaluations and benchmarks is. And it'll include high level what it is that evaluation benchmarks is reporting at this date. And I would like to amend my own proposal and say that I think it'd be a good idea to introduce what strategic planning is within this report for information. So basically the report for information will have two pieces, evaluations and strategic planning. And so members can come into this meeting knowing a bit about what strategic planning is, and they can come prepared with questions and ideas. Adonis, I see your hand up, so go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to support what you're saying. Yeah, we send out agenda items at stakeholders tables because agenda items that people are voting on. It's not necessary that we send out the contents of what our actual meeting is. Really just a broad outline of what people will be doing throughout the night, right? So we don't have to put all that material in there. And I suggest not putting the certainly not putting any of the recommendations that the evaluation is in there at all, until members get to see them and be able to get feedback on them. So yeah, so I would say that. So essentially what you just said, Ismail. So I'm fine with that.
But I'm now even thinking, so I will modify the report for information even for evaluations. I think because currently the way I have it structured, Adonis, and the rest of the team here, is there a traditional report for information. So I had what evaluations is, what the milestones are, but I guess we don't have to talk about that for this particular meeting where evaluations is just reporting back on findings and recommendations. So maybe in that report, we only include high level of what those findings and recommendations are to clarify or to repeat what it is that we're just trying to pass here is, can we modify the traditional report for information to only talk about the items that we will be discussing and presenting on the day of, which are two things, evaluations and the strategic planning. And I also wanted to add the fact that the report for information would only reflect the things that we are presenting.
The only thing I would say is if we could get away from using the word strategic planning.
Okay. So we can say
it's around the review of the work of the SDP and looking for feedback from our members about what we did, where we are, and where we want to be. Something to that nature. Just leave it very broad. Or I would leave it very broad. I think it's really confusing that people, because the refresh is going on at the same time, to use strategic planning and I think if we use just sort of general terms would be fine, and then we could explain what we're doing when we're there.
So can we, I agree, maybe we can do some sort of not a rebranding, I don't want to formalize it like that, but we can simplify it for, again, community friendly language. But with regards to the report for information, we will have to include something about that piece. So what is it that we would like to be included? So we would want to share either a summary of what it is or a high level of what it is in the report for information when I send that out next week. Do we have any idea of what to include?
Well, again, it's not a voting item, so it's, I would say if you have if you want to share, if the evaluation wants to share data rather than recommendations of what we're doing, like data of what they found in the evaluation, but not the recommendations itself. You know what I mean? So how
Okay,
much?
so kind of letting people make up their own conclusions, not coming to conclusions for them.
Yeah. If you're gonna, I'd rather just a broad, we're gonna be talking about the evaluations, like a really broad agenda about what we're doing, and leave all the details out. Personally, but if you feel you need to send something, then if you feel that the data would be helpful for people to see beforehand, sure, send the data. If we have a list of accomplishments, sure, send it. But if we don't, we're not ready, which I suspect we won't be.
So I'll write that down. Michael, I have you next, and then Sarah Jane. Michael, go ahead.
Okay, so you do think we should discuss the recommendations at the meeting, just we don't need to send them out in advance? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think if the evaluation,
right,
they have something to recommendations to make, it'd be great to share it and have feedback.
Okay.
Around.
I mean, I think that the strategic planning process hopefully goes beyond just the sort of immediate recommendations. Because I think this evaluation was sort of on a year-to-year basis, whereas now we're sort of going on a 5-year to 5-year basis. Mm-hmm. So that also should be taken into consideration. I have a couple other questions that hopefully we can get to later, and we can discuss some aspects of the strategic plan today beyond just this meeting, and maybe that will help us get a better idea what the overall process is. But in general, I think what you're saying, I don't think we have more in terms of data to send out, because again, that's the part I think would be a little bit too much if we send out a lot of data. So in a way, that the recommendations were kind of like the simple version. So I don't see any point of sending out the evaluation data in advance of the meeting. I'd rather try to get at least a draft of the accomplishments out in advance.
Yeah, I agree. It would be helpful if that was ready in advance. I just don't. Because considering we've been asking for this information for the last 3 weeks, I'm not sure we're gonna get much before the April 25th meeting.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with the both of you. These are nice to haves. We thought these were like needs, but now we're just not getting this information in time, so we were kind of missing out on that. So I like that. We kind of share what we have. And Sergeant, I see your hand. So but before I get to you, what I have here is the only summary we have. So if working groups share their milestones, then we send that out in advance. But if we don't have it, then we don't. And with regards to evaluations, we were thinking about sharing the raw data, but perhaps what we can do is just share the information of evaluations and what it is that the presentation will cover in terms of we have evaluations that we did in 2023. If you come to this meeting, you'll see the data, you'll see the recommendations. Just again, very high level. And I also want to say that we do something like that with regards to, I know we don't want to call it strategic planning, but maybe we call it space for feedback or something along those lines. Maybe we don't talk about strategic planning in particular, but we just talk about leaving space for engagement, dialogue, feedback, something around that. And then we'll include a short summary for that. I will write down that I'll try to prepare something for next week. I'll bring it back to planning over here. We can kind of go over. I'll share that with the agenda when I send it out on Tuesday so everyone can read it. And we'll make changes to that on Thursday before we send that out. Sarah Jane, over to you.
We're beating this to death because we don't have the information and it's all so abstract. Why don't we stop, please? And then just get the information and do it next week. It's just tedious. I'm sorry.
I hear you.
Stop.
Anyways.
Let's move on.
And to Sarah Jane's points, moving on to the next agenda item. Kidding. So I think, yeah, we pretty much landed on something here. We know what we're going to be doing with regards to the agenda, the report for information. And again, I'll prepare a short summary for the feedback piece that we'll have, the engagement activity. I'll share with the planning committee to be approved next week. On to the final agenda item for today, strategic planning. Donis, can I ask you to share these two ideas with the group? Or did you want me to just go ahead and read these bullet points that we had? And then you can take over after I'm done reading?
Well, I may have to leave a little bit early from the meeting. But I think for the most part, we want to, so the thought is, can I go? And
Yep.
Yep. So the thought is that we use this opportunity of the evaluations and the strategic planning that we may call something else, like the evaluation of the SDP, for instance, to use this opportunity to help people understand what the SDP is about, essentially. Really just, less about the working groups and more about the priorities, the needs that residents had identified, which was employment, which was safety concerns, which was the need for communications, which was the need for community spaces and recreation activities. Those were what the working groups were just meant to fill those needs. And therefore, really, when we talk about the accomplishments of the working group, we're asking, how has each working group fulfilled those needs? Right? So hopefully the idea is that the working groups, their work is about less about how many people were involved in the working group itself, less about how many people had, how many dinners were served at the meeting or what have you, but really what they actually did in terms, that's what we talk about milestones, what were the actual accomplishments to fixing the need of employment, to fixing the needs of safety in the community, to furthering communications, To establishing recreation opportunities. So what did we do around that? And that's what I'm hoping that each of the working groups will submit to look at those issues, right? And that's what is preparing to present. So when that comes, I'm hoping that whoever's Michael, I believe, is facilitating that part. Ismail, I'm happy to join them, but really it's drawing out from each of the working groups. We just don't want to present the working groups as they wrote them. No, we want to edit them to answer those questions. We want each of the working groups to answer those questions. It's 5 years, right? We got 5 years of funding to resolve these issues. To further employment, to further safety, to further communications, to further, what did we do? If we can't answer that question, we're in big trouble, in my opinion. If each of the working groups can't answer what they did to create safety in the community, to create employment in their community, we're in big trouble. So be able to say, here's what we did, and be able to get resident feedback on those accomplishments, whether they think those were the right strategies that we use, whether we think that they were effective, what other strategies we could use. We want to hear from residents what we should have had done. We want to hear, and then we want to be able, essentially get their feedback around those issues. And that's what the interactive pieces are about. So the interactive pieces is, again, it's a way of people walking around to each of wherever those, whether it's on the wall or on tables, walking around to each of the working groups' accomplishments and milestones and giving feedback in one way or another. Again, we haven't nailed down exactly what that format is, but I mean, there's a number of ideas that we often, when we have events, we have the roles, correct me if I'm wrong. What worked well?
The rose, thorn, and butt?
Yeah. So that's an easy way of doing it. But really it's, asking basically, again, it's hard to know without seeing all the accomplishments, but anyways, we're figuring out, and we'll do that as soon as we get those accomplishments, but having a process where residents could very easily take out like colored sticky papers and write, that represents the rose, sticky papers that represents the thorns, sticky papers, whatever, right? To get feedback easy, and then a more by having maybe noters on each of those working groups to be able to, maybe the co-chairs or someone differently being able to take actual feedback that residents have, like if they want to go more into details about why they said what they said or why they put what they said. So being able to have each resident go to each of the 4 working groups and make comments, have comments, and put their feedback on each of those pieces of paper, each of those charts. That's the idea, to make it more engaging, to get feedback from we want to get feedback from the SDP members about these things. And really, I think we should be really encouraging. I know we had a Zoom thing, but really we should be encouraging that this is an in-person meeting and really encourage people to participate that way. And we don't try to do something complex by having, if members can attend by in person, then we figure out a survey way that goes out to them to get that information. But for now, like, it's really the start of this engagement process. And I say to start, to Michael's point, that once we get all this feedback, this is just part of the process in terms of figuring out the recommendations that we want to make as far as strategic planning. There are other pieces that we want to be able to look at as well. And if all goes well, we will have at the end of the day and 3 months from now, we will have a really good picture of what members have gotten out of the SDP, which is another thing, right? What have members gotten out of the SDP, you know, in terms of skills, and we have to have a place for that as well, figuring out that piece, like, you know, facilitation skills. Yeah, to learn what have members got out of the SDP, you know, work, part-time work, employment, whatever, right? And maybe that's a general chart. Like we have a different chart that says how have you personally benefited from the SDP, and have them write down that, you know, employment opportunities. I learned childhood skills. I got my certificate for this. Like being able to document that, which is another place that we don't document, right? So being able to basically bring all these pieces together and a larger process in terms of a report that, as Michael has said, that looks at external factors, that looks at resources, that looks at other, and basically says, okay, for the next 5 years, here are our recommendations around the SDP. What needs to change in terms of the structure, for instance? Those questions we're not answering at this minute, at this meeting. Really, it's members' feedback in terms of the accomplishments of the SDP, what they got out of the SDP, their thoughts about the SDP, and all the way that we help them understand the SDP, because a lot of people don't understand the SDP. So those are the things that we want to accomplish through this, I think. And I think that's all I had.
Is it my turn?
Yes, Sarah Jane, I was just going to say, go ahead.
That's okay. I read somewhere in this, buried in this somewhere, that instead of social inclusion, cohesion and conclusion, we were going to say about belonging, which I love.
Yeah.
I mean, social cohesion and inclusion, does that mean anything to anybody really, rather than belonging? Belonging means something.
Yeah, exactly. Those are the questions we want to ask. Right. Like when we present the SDP and help people understand the SDP, we use belonging and not social inclusion and cohesion.
Oh God, it's too hard to say even.
Yeah.
Easy to say. That's just my opinion. I can't stay past another 10 minutes. But...
Yeah, I can't either. So maybe yeah. But you know what? That's a really good question, Sarah Jane, that you brought up. Why don't we have a chart that says, how do you feel how do you feel you belong in the SDP?
Belong.
Yeah. How do you belong in the SDP? We have the SDP is about belonging, feeling that residents, different income levels, different groups, different languages belong and are empowered through the SDP. How do you feel that you belong in the SDP? Right? And have them right. You know, did I and maybe we put out a whole list of things. Did I chair a meeting? Did I participate in meetings? Did I learn or have opportunity to get a job or find employment? Was I able to cater food? Was I able to support childcare? Was I able to do like whole list of things? And then they could write more, you know? So like, yeah. Anyways, those are our thoughts.
I agree. Absolutely.
Oh, sorry. What did I do? What did I do? Oh, whatever. A second.
No, you didn't do anything, Sarah Jane. You're okay.
Okay. Everybody disappeared for a bit.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so we have the question about changing belonging. In terms of the actual language that we use in the SDP, documents and things. I'm not sure of the process to change that, but I would assume that decision would have to go back to the stakeholders table meeting. But with regards to the activity, I like the idea of asking residents how they think, to kind of get a feel of the sense of belonging within the SDP. So how they feel about belonging at the SDP, how they think they belong, and as well as asking them, reiterating the question about things that they might have learned or skills that they learned from the SDP. So this, I guess, would be in addition to the 4 charts that we already have for each of the working groups. These would be 2 additional charts.
You know, it's something we could do at the registration table, like just when people come in, like there's a chart there. How do you feel you belong in the SDP? You know,
I like that.
and encourage them as they come in to write that out.
So maybe make it as part of the registration or the attendance.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to be on the same sheet of paper. We can just have chart paper right next to it.
No, of
And
course.
people just write it in.
Yeah. Okay, folks, I really have to go. Folks,
Yeah.
I got a 7 o'clock appointment.
So do I. I'll bring halal marshmallows this time, though.
And Adonis, I will be asking the group. We had 2 ideas about having the roundtable discussion or having rectangular tables with just co-chairs on there, just having rapid discussions. I will present both these ideas to the team, and we'll see what we land on.
Great.
All right.
Okay, folks. Ciao.
Thanks for
See you
joining.
later. Bye-bye.
Marlene, sorry, you still have your hand up. Did you get a chance?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, I was just making sure
Please.
you got to speak. That's all.
Forget to take it off.
So to address the concerns that Adonis just brought forward,
Yep.
we were proposing, Adonis had proposed actually 2 ideas. And so I'll read these out, and if there's any questions, I'll try my best to answer them. But we wanted to decide between 2 ideas here. So generally, for the working groups, we were going to have the chart papers or the big printouts as we discussed earlier to highlight the milestones. But we also wanted to have co-chairs of the working groups sit at those tables or sit at tables in the same room, and where residents can come and have this open dialogue and open discussion. So there's 2 ways we can do this. Adonis was proposing that we have the larger tables, and we have about, that seats about 8 people at one table, and we have people come in with facilitators to discuss. And the discussion would include, things that work well. Residents can come with their questions. Residents can come with, I don't want to say complaints, but things that, they might have disagreed with in the past, and they can share that. And perhaps co-chairs would even be able to explain how those items were addressed. So that's one option. It would be a big roundtable discussion with 5 or 6 residents at each of the tables of the working groups. So that's one. The second option is using rectangular tables, where I'll use this sheet of paper as reference. So where we would have, nope, that doesn't work. So we would have co-chairs sitting at this rectangular table, and residents can come sit at the table and quickly share what they think was a rose, what they thought was a bud, what they thought was a thorn. And members, either the coaches would note it down, or we would ask volunteers or animators to kind of note as people come in to have these discussions to just write it down. And this will be relatively quick. So people would come sit at each working group. That way residents can go and sit at each of the working groups and share their opinions across all of them, rather than spending their entire time at just one group. So again, 2 options. Either we have one big table and longer discussion, or we have a smaller table and shorter discussion. Do we have any thoughts on that? Do we have any ideas, any feedback, anything like that?
The mobility.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
So Jen, was that you?
Mobility, as I said. I like the idea of mobility.
Mobility.
Flowing through things rather than sitting.
Okay, so you would like the idea of shorter conversations, to the points. Okay, so Sarah Jane's in favor of option 2. Michael, go ahead.
Okay, so for the purpose of this meeting, it may not matter that much. I think at some of the meetings in May, we need to make sure we're having like conversations and not just independent sort of ideas floating out there. So, but for this meeting, it may not matter. But what I did think for this meeting is that perhaps we can use like a little bit more specific questions, like instead of just using terms that are just positive and negative, like rose and thorn, we could ask more specifically and make sure we have like questions like what could make us more effective or something like that. This is more has a more quality to it than just a one-word sort of emotional plus or minus type feeling. So we get like people to be more directed in their responses. So that's what I would say. But as far as the format, I think we're still talking about having them for each working group. So it's not just going to have to be people lining up. We'll have multiple stations. So I think that the shorter time where each person can just get their ideas put down might be good. But I hope that we can give them a slightly more sort of informative set of questions so that we will just get a lot of the more general kind of positives and negatives as well, however you ask the questions. But I think that having at least one or two questions in there that are a little bit more directed might help make sure that we also hear some of those ideas.
Yummy or yucky, I think we should do. And bring the kids down. I gotta go. Anyway, thanks very much, everybody.
See you
Thank you,
later.
Sarah Jane.
Bye-bye.
So I understand I'm just the admin, but I do want to say that I agree with Michael. I think it's important that we have this dialogue and we do get some information. And perhaps in just building on Michael's idea, we can have questions. And Michael, I would ask if maybe you can support on this idea in terms of actually coming up with questions. But maybe we can have like somewhat of a conversation starter for co-chairs. So co-chairs can refer to this list of questions. As residents come, residents might have one or two ideas that they feel very strongly about. And then co-chairs can look to that list of questions and ask specifics too. And since we will have the list of questions, we can structure the questions so that they would only require a shorter response, not so much of an essay format sort of response. So we can still keep these conversations brief. So we do get more information than just I like this and I don't like that. But we're also not getting, it's not this 1 hour conversation with just one resident, right? What do we think about that idea? So again, this is just building on what Michael was suggesting, just adding more details to that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
I
Yes,
guess
Michael.
we're sort of out of time today, but the one other thing I wanted to make sure we had before April 25th is like a work plan for the rest of the strategic plan so that we can tell people even like specific dates of one or two meetings in May and say, if you want to discuss issues that were raised about the working groups, this is the meeting where we'll take everything we heard from today and try to settle it. If you want to discuss process or organization structure within the SDP, there's a meeting on such and such a date. If you want to discuss, I don't know, maybe there's one other, maybe something about direction and vision or those issues that came up about roles of some of the working groups, like the bigger direction and purpose questions. So maybe if we had like 3 meeting dates, actual dates set in May that could be announced on April 25th, I think that would help a lot.
Marlene, go ahead.
Yeah, because there's some of these things that we may want to talk about in greater depth. And I think setting out, you know, some of them are, you know, you're going to be able to take care of fairly easily, but there may be, you know, one or two things that need more conversation. And I think I agree with Michael where you're saying, you know, let's have a couple of other dates that you may have a more fulsome conversation about them. I agree. I think this is a good format.
Checking to see if there's anything else here in the notes that I can. So Michael, can I ask you to help prepare with some questions? And you don't have to submit this or anything, but just next week's planning committee, maybe you can share some examples of what those questions might be that we ask during this engagement piece. So as residents
Right. Yeah, no, I'm actually going to try to get a fair number of things written by tomorrow morning. I don't know, it won't necessarily cover everything, and there'll be some more to do next week, but I'm going to try to get some of this started pretty quickly at this point.
All right, great. Don't think there's anything else we need to quite land on. So we basically decided that we don't have to decide on between these two options today. And people don't seem too strongly about one or the other, although Sarah Jane has expressed that she would like to move around rather than just be seated at one table. Since we don't have any strong opinions about this, I will leave this decision for next week. And so once the agenda is finalized, the report for information is finalized, we have a more clear picture as to what this meeting will look like. We can land on something based on that. So we'll defer that decision. Do we have any comments, concerns, anything like that before we end the meeting today? See nothing. Let me check the chat really quickly. Wow, we've gone from 12 people in this meeting down to 6. Everyone kind of snuck away. So I'll say, for those that stuck around, thank you so much for being here today. And I look forward to talking to everyone again next week.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care, y'all.
Sure.
Everyone take care. Bye.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And please follow us on our social media platform. For more information, you can check out our website.